Greetings survivors and friends, SHADOWFRAX here with your weekly Rust update, where in this episode we have checkpoints, sleeves, and bloom! But first, did last week's changes to gunplay cause you to recoil in horror? Well, a lot of people didn't like the results, that's for sure. All I've been hearing about all week is recoil this and AIMCONE that. I'm fed up with it. But I guess we've got to talk about it again, even though all I really want are some new arrowheads. Anyway, Helk decided to do some research involving moving targets, which he says were bots, but I'm thinking might well have been unsuspecting noobs. Whatever the case, he was shocked to find that he couldn't hit a barn door with the AK or semi-rifle, and as he obviously has superpowers in this area, he concluded that something must definitely be amiss with the setup. Changes were thus enacted, and now AIMCONES on full auto weapons have a weighting system, which means that a percentage of the shots are more likely to land in the centre of said AIMCONE rather than at the peripheries. Also, there was apparently a bug with some of the AIMCONES which was causing them to be calculated as aim spheres. We've had all sorts of funny shapes these last couple of weeks. Whatever next, aim horses? Anyway, this should now be fixed, and in addition to this, there were some more weapon balances, including a reduction to the maximum AIMCONE on the AK with a slight increase to horizontal recoil, which is kind of a halfway compromise with the way it was before. Boo! Shotguns also received some love with a change to the way their AIMCONES were calculated, as can be witnessed from this exciting before and after example. It might not be so obvious on first sight, but you should notice that hardly any of the pellets in the top row are actually anywhere near the aim point. This is obviously not good, and the sort of thing you'd more likely expect from a funfair shooting range. The way it now works is that the first 20% of pellets are more likely to actually go where you're aiming, and the rest are calculated to land in a much more even spread. This should now make hitting players or even barn doors with shotguns much easier, but in line with their traditional close-range usefulness, the effective distance has been reduced somewhat to about 40 metres for buckshot and 25 metres for handmade shells. Incidentally, handmade shells do a bit more damage, have a slightly increased spread, and slugs are now half price. How are you getting on with drop boxes? I did make a mistake last week saying they wouldn't drop their contents when destroyed, so I apologise for that. They can't be used to deny loot to raiders, in case you wondered. There were a few small quality of life tweaks to them this week. Firstly, they glow at night. Nice. Items won't now auto-submit when inserted, which is good if you make a mistake and you're only human. Similar items will now stack even if submitted separately, and lastly, if it's full, it just won't accept any more items instead of sneezing them out onto the floor like before. Some efforts were made to fix a number of vulnerabilities over the weekend, which could bring a server to its knees if exploited. During the process, a bug was discovered whereby the bow would continually spam the server with packets if aimed with no arrows in your inventory, so this one was squashed too. There were some optimizations to anisotropic filtering, which affects the quality of textures when viewed at an angle, streamlining to the way decals are handled, and improvements to memory allocation. Do you remember how view models would sometimes spaz out and look like they were about to fly apart when aiming down sights? This was occurring specifically just after you whipped them out, but rejoice, for this has now been fixed. Also, on a similar theme, and I know how earth-shatteringly important this one is to some of you, work is being done to actually show clothing along with whatever skins you may have applied on view models. It's early days, of course, and some of the clothing will need to go to the tailors for adjustment, but along with the skin colour variants I showed you last week, it looks like soon yet another layer of believability will be getting added. Now, something else that got right up a lot of players' noses this week, or should I say in their eyes, was bloom. You could be trundling along quite merrily, go round a rock and boom! Okay, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but problems with bloom this week were all thanks to a bug being squashed, which could allow the effect to be turned off completely via the console. Unfortunately, in fixing this, a few more bugs were created, and they were, in turn, splattered in this update. Bloom is actually meant to be on for everyone, and not just because it can look nice in the right context, it's more a matter of everybody's vision being on a level playing field. Elsewhere in graphics, the ball has started rolling on using the new revamped shader to apply head, face, and indeed body hair to player models. There's nothing to show regarding this yet, and probably won't be for a while, but rest assured I will keep you combed over as soon as something grows out. In works in progress, the countdown to the new launch site monument continues, with the interior of the factory nearly being finished. The rocket and its associated scaffolding sits firmly in the centre like some overgrown child's climbing frame, and there are now elevator shafts and ladders leading to hidden areas. Outside, fuel silos are dotted around with ladders to allow access to the top of them, thus adding adding some vertical gameplay and sniping spots to the area, and at the front of the property, a new checkpoint stands ready to deny access to anything larger than a quad bike. Incidentally, this will also be getting added to other monuments as a visual improvement. Apart from this, sounds for metal melee weapon impacts were polished, some updates to music should be rolling out next week, and a new convar was added for server owners, and that is server.wounding enabled. Basically, if this is set to false, players will die straight away instead of writhing around on the floor complaining about it for ages. Okay, that's your lot. Please leave me a thumbs up and slap the subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm available in Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Steam group flavors. Also, I have a Teespring shop with a couple of extremely sexy designs for sale, so do have a look when you get a chance, won't you? Links in the description. I shall catch you all in my next video, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio.